Today we are talking about the best healer in 11.1. And no, before the accusations come in, this is not the clickbait about being the #1 top meta healer that will be the strongest. We are talking about, very simply, the best designed healer. We are talking about the healer with the most choices, the healer with the most options and the most variety in its tree. Basically, what is happening in 11.1 is that Preservation Evoker has gotten half a dozen, if not more, talents opened up to viability because of a simple QOL change, really. You already had one QOL change already, which was the one where now Dream Breath automatically targets you and 5 other players. So it's not just targeting 5 players and then if it targets you, good, if it doesn't, tough luck. This was very relevant for Engulf. It was just easier for you to manage your Engulf usages if you always had Dream Breath on yourself, so you always knew who to target with Engulf. Except if you're of course casting Dream Breath in the middle of a raid, you don't really know who gets it. So many Evokers, for example, were actually actively avoiding healing the raid with Dream Breath. They would just do this, turn away from the raid and heal themselves, so at least they have the guarantee Dream Breath was going to go on them. In 11.1, this QOL change means that no matter how many players you're about to be targeting with this, one of the HOTS will always go on you. That's already a very good QOL. The other very good QOL, which is what is opening up this plethora of extra possibilities for your builds, is Echo. Echo no longer consuming essence spells. Obviously, as an evoker, you only have 2 essence spells, Echo and Emerald Blossom, so this means Echo doesn't consume Emerald Blossom anymore. So we are back in live. We're back in live right now. We are echoing ourselves, then we are blossoming on the ground, Blossom pops and Echo goes away because Echo consumed Blossom. We go back to the PTR, we echo ourselves, we put down Blossom, here is Echo, Blossom pops, Echo is still here. So that's the change. This is very, very good, of course, because previously Blossom was going to completely destroy all of your echoes. Even worse, it was going to completely destroy all of your echoes even when you weren't casting Blossom yourself. Because, for example, if you're playing with Field of Dreams, your seedlings spawned by your blossoms have a chance to cause another blossom to spawn. So even in random situations, an extra blossom could spawn and all of your echoes would be lost. So this was making the life of an evoker still trying to play with Temporal Anomaly, still trying to play with, ramping up for Verdant Embraces or for Spirit Blooms or for Dream Breath very hard to play also with Blossom. So whenever players tried to play with Blossom, they had to basically just only spend essences, only spend all of their resources with Blossom. However, with this change now, you can play both. You can now alternate Blossom and Echo. You can now give way more value to talents that were dead or had a much harder chance at being played, like Titan's Gift, like Ouroboros, like of course Seedlings and Field of Dreams and Cycle of Life, but even talents possibly like Nosdormu's Teachings. All of these talents have now found way more value, to the point where a lot of it will be about, where do you want to go? Do you want to go for Ouroboros, or do you want to still stay with something like Dreamwalker, or do you want to keep Ouroboros but leave Titan's Gift and take Dreamflight? Do you want to still take Dreamflight without having to take Spark of Insight? These are now much more interchangeable. You still have, sure, some dead talents here and there with little value, but now it has gotten much better. Now, the other positive thing with this change to Evoker is the fact that you're not even forced to play an entire, complete Blossom build. A Blossom build could very simply be used, ignoring the talents you normally would use for your Blossom build, and very simply only use Cycle of Life. Because now the sort of recommended way to play would still be to just play Blossom whenever you have free procs with your Essence Burst. Because, very simply, playing Blossom costs a lot of mana. It's very hard, even if you are to play a full Blossom build as an Evoker, because of how much mana Blossom costs. It's practically a chain heal of a Shaman, and if you play Shaman, you know the troubles of Resto Shaman with mana. So that's difficult, but the cheat with Evoker is that when you have Essence Burst, your next Essence ability is free. So with this new version of your Blossom no longer breaking your echoes, one of the most annoying things is the raid is here, is taking some rot damage, or maybe 1 or 2 players fail a mechanic and take more damage than they should, there is 10, maybe 12 seconds before a big AoE, so you're in the middle of building up your echoes, you're in the middle of spreading your TA, building up, and there is damage coming, and you have Essence Burst, and you don't really want to heal, because you're building up your echoes, you don't really have any ways to heal the group, even if you wanted to. Now, you can, because even if you drop this, your echoes are still going to be on targets, right? So with this sort of Blossom-less build, you would still make use of Cycle of Life, because Cycle of Life creates a mini Cloudburst totem every 3 Emerald Blossoms. So very simply, you would have to, yes, make a weak aura or keep track of your stacks of Cycle of Life to make sure you are at 2 out of 3 before the big damage comes. And then, once you are done casting your TAs, your echoes, and you spread stuff around, maybe with Reversion, maybe with Dream Breath, whatever you want, after you do your Verdant Embrace to get the buff, and then Dream Breath to put Dream Breath on yourself, right before using Engulf, right, for the big burst healing, you can drop your Blossom. That will then spawn Cycle of Life, store the heal, and then engulf yourself, which would also go and store inside of Cycle of Life, which then blows up. So it's an entire combo centered around Blossom, except you're not actually playing with Blossom. You're just using Blossoms every once in a while, whenever you get them for free, and make sure they lined up the spawn of Cycle of Life with the burst of Engulf. That's one way you can play. The other way is to simply say, no, I'm just gonna play full Blossom. Just gonna go full Blossoms with Seedlings, with Field of Dreams, spawn as many Blossoms as I can. I don't care when I spawn Cycles of Life, I'm just gonna keep spawning Blossoms. That's the other way you can play, which is still a very good way to play, especially for rot type of fights. Fights where the damage is more continuous, where you have more ticking rot damage, this will be better than this much more concentrated big burst style of healing. The other very positive change, or very good change, that possibly is so good that it might actually change the stats you go for. Because right now, the number one way to go as an evoker, even if we go back to live, is to just stack mastery. Get as much mastery as you can, put your flasks for mastery as well, because mastery is very good. However, in this patch, first of all, mastery is slightly nerfed because now mastery no longer snapshots, which means that the yes or no buff of mastery. Are you at higher HP than the player you are healing or not? If you are, mastery works. If you are not, mastery is as if you had none of it. Previously, meaning in live, this snapshots, which means that back in live, if I cast Dream Breath at full HP, right? And then I take a chunk of damage down to 10%, my mastery will work on this Dream Breath and continue to work even if I am at very low HP. Because it has snapshot, it's saved, it remembers the time it was cast, and the time it was cast was when it was at full HP. In 11.1, there is no more snapshot, so if I'm using Dream Breath and I drop to 10% HP, my mastery won't be working until I am back up, which is not like super like important. For the big moments of big healing, you will almost always have more HP than the other players, very simply because much of your burst around Engulf centers around using Verdant Embrace, most likely on yourself, which means you're healing yourself. You are also playing with Panacea, so when you Verdant Embrace yourself, you're also healing yourself for even more, so it's just more likely that you will be at higher HP. But the other positive is that now you have Engulf that scales with Haste. You can see now from live where Engulf has a 30-second cooldown to now in PTR, Engulf has a 22-second cooldown because it scales with Haste, and now I have 16,000 Haste. Mastery is still good, mastery is still high, right? But now also Haste is being focused second, or at the same level as mastery, which brings down Engulf by a lot, making it much more castable. What is also positive is the added change of Flame Shaper in 11.1, which is practically getting quite a lot of, changes to the entire tree of Flame Shaper, which includes, of course, Engulf's cooldown now reduced by Haste. But the other powerful cooldown is that now Traveling Flame gives you CDR to Fire Breath and Dream Breath when you are casting Engulf. If I were to, for example, cast Stasis, right, then use Dream Breath and then Engulf, activate Stasis, my Dream Breath is off cooldown. That's the cool thing about this change. Now you have just an extra reduced cooldown on your Dream Breath because of the amount of times casting Engulf, giving you cooldown reduction, and because you are hasted, your cooldown on Engulf is even lower, which means you get to cast it even more, which means you get even more CDR on your Dream Breath. Also, the other slight positive, technically possibly even in Mythic Plus, is that this is also CDR not just on Dream Breath, but also on Fire Breath. So Fire Breath also gets its cooldown reduced. So you can still gain value of this even as a healer. If you go down the route of playing with Leaping Flames, you can still take benefit by having a full rank Fire Breath. So you can spawn a lot of Leaping Flames, and because you're spawning a lot of them, you have a very high chance of getting even more Essence Bursts, which means you get to cast more free Blossoms. So it synergizes very well together with the new change. Obviously, the tier set is very punishing to lose, because one of the reasons really why Flame Shaper was so powerful this tier was because of the tier set. Temporal Compression actually is better if you go back in live. Temporal Compression increases the healing of your next Empower spell by 10%. You were doing your ramp, you wait for the damage to come, you're using Reversion to benefit from Golden Hour, and after you use Reversion, you also get the 4 stacks of Temporal Compression. So then you can Verdant Embrace yourself to also gain Call of Ysera. So now you have this Dream Breath buff and this Dream Breath buff, and you can now use it. So your Dream Breath goes from, ticking for 83,000 by default to ticking for, without crits, 180,000. It's practically more than double the heal just because of all of these buffs. Now these are lost because this tier set is going away. Now the new tier set has gotten better with the change. The 4-piece Verdant Embrace always grants insurance now works with echoes. So now we have to go and find some lab rats over here. If I were to throw out or simply just echo this fella over here and then Verdant Embrace myself, he also gets insurance, not just me, and also works with Lifebind. However, because Lifebind only lasts for 5 seconds, it's actually only 1 tick of Lifebind with insurance. You can see my healing done over here. If I Verdant Embrace him, Lifebind is going to tick because of insurance that I left on him. However, this is only good if the Verdant Embrace into Lifebind healing remains the main way to heal, because otherwise, of course, if you are not going to spend all of the echoes you have created with Verdant Embrace, but instead you're going to use Reversion, or you're going to use them in Dream Breath, because turns out Dream Breaths become so strong, you want to use echoes with this as well, then of course this tier set will have little value, because the amount of times you will spread them with Verdant Embrace will be quite low, quite little. It will continue to have good value in Mythic Plus, because in Mythic Plus you will very often use Verdant Embrace to heal the party and do some, Echo into Spirit Bloom, Lifebind spreading shenanigans, so the value of this will remain high. It will also remain high if you are playing Chrono Warden, because this is also valuable because of the extra value of your Spirit Bloom, which works very well with Lifebind, so you still want to use Verdant Embrace when you're playing Chrono Warden. So at the very least in Mythic Plus, and as Chrono Warden is still going to be a powerful tier set. In the case of Flame Shaper, it will depend on whether or not you will continue to use your echoes with Verdant Embrace or not. Either way, it's definitely still a loss talking about strictly the power of Engulf, because it's just going to be 40% weaker by default. As soon as you change your tier set, your Engulfs will start being 40% weaker. You are going to have, of course, other benefits. As I mentioned, you have the CDR now of Engulf, way more often being able to cast Dream Breath. You're going to have other buffs to Dream Breath itself. You have also gotten Expanded Lungs buffed, so Dream Breath by default now is also 10% stronger when you play Flame Shaper. So there are plenty of other positives, but the loss of the tier set is quite hurtful. That's why I was mentioning about the Spec being the best one in 11.1. It's not really about the healing itself. For all we know, they might be the weakest healer, actually, turns out. However, the amount of possibilities they have to play, playing around Chrono Warden, so way more possibly around Spirit Bloom, and definitely more around Lifebind combos. Staying Flame Shaper, you can still play around Engulf the traditional way. You can start introducing more Blossoms to your rotation, which requires perhaps a bit more complexity. You have to start tracking your Cycle of Life stacks to make sure your cycle of life will become active as you're using Engulf. You will also gain even more value because of the CDR you give to Dream Breath, as well as Fire Breath, because Fire Breath, thanks to Leaping Flames, will still be a very big source of free essence bursts, which will be very good, as well as more tracking to do, because now you have Ouroboros that you want to play with. If you're playing with Blossom, you can save some pretty fatty Emerald Blossoms thanks to Ouroboros and thanks to Titan's Gift. So you wait for your essence burst, and then you do some Echo and Temporal Anomaly spam to get to 5 stacks, and then you benefit from both of these in a single big chunky blossom. So it is more things to track, but they are, both of them, overall, a significant improvement compared to the current build going back to live. Because the current build, as mentioned, Blossom was rather dead. You could try now during farm, to play with Ouroboros, to just drop, a Blossom or two, but generally speaking, you would just ignore this. You would just spread your Echoes, make use of Golden Hour with your Reversion, especially thanks to the current tier set, buffing Reversion healing and giving you even more chances of generating faster temporal compression charges, but this is going to be lost in 11.1, so it's not going to be nearly as profitable. You had way less incentive to practically go all over here, really, even in the raid. Now though, this incentive to pick these options has gone much higher up than in current version, in current live 11.0.7 for Evoker. The build could be the Chrono Warden build, it could be the Flame Shepherd build as it is now, it could be the Flame Shepherd build playing full Blossom, full degen Blossom, don't even bother with Echoes, just spend all of your essences with Blossoms. You could go the halfway, still play around Blossoms, but only spend your Blossoms with essence bursts. It could be the even more restrictive, even more, I guess, cynical version of the build where you only use Cycle of Life and you only use this to get the mini Cloudburst to further empower your Engulf. So there are a lot of positives going around Evoker, especially Flame Shaper, which, as mentioned, is of the 2-3s, the one that is being given a lot of attention. Flame Shaper being the one being touched, no real changes actually to Chrono Warden, will definitely broaden the possible options of build for Evoker. Of course, this will of course be pending the power level in the end. This might be extremely weak. It will be mostly depending on the hurt of losing this 4-piece set bonus for your Dream Breath value whenever you Engulf. If the CDR on Engulf, the fact that Engulf will also give CDR to these two, this one can give you even more Essence Burst, so you can use even more free Blossoms. Whether or not lining up this together with this will make up for the loss of your tier, etc, etc. But at least in the intent, at least in the idea of the spec coming in 11.1, it's definitely getting improved in the choice, the options, the variety for the build, both in Mythic Plus and in the raid, because Flame Shaper has also been made better in Mythic Plus. Now the dots of Fire Breath are shorter, the damage of the dots have been increased. Now you also get CDR of Fire Breath, which was your #1 source of big damage in Mythic Plus as a Flame Shaper Evoker, all getting buffed. So waiting for the upcoming patch, we have a reasonable positive outlook to the changes of Preservation Evoker. So for today, on this Wednesday, I guess on this reset day in EU, it is time to leave each other. We're starting as usual the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with of course everyone who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, okay, I talked too much. It's been like 2 videos in a row. The throat is starting to receive some damage. Time to have some tea break.